Hey everybody, and welcome back. I just wanted to take a few minutes today and kind of talk about what my biggest takeaway from UFC 272 was. And that, in my opinion, was that if you are going to go up against somebody who has a very strong wrestling base, right? Or who is better at offensively wrestling than you, I don't think it's enough to just have takedown defense anymore. Like, you have to be able to understand how to put somebody on their back and control them from that position just a little bit. I really think that's the only way to counter this kind of stuff. Because when you get put on the ground and when they eventually get you to the ground, right, you're stuck there. And it's very hard to get back up. And maybe the answer is learning how to get back up from those positions. But I just think that once you go to the ground with somebody who is able to lay on top of you, you've now entered into a world where they have a lifetime of experience holding people on the ground, and you are just trying to return to your feet, and it's a lot of energy, right? I think the key and the reason that you don't see Colby Covington and Usman shoot on each other too often is because they both have heavy offensive wrestling bases. They're both capable. And when the other person knows that you're a capable wrestler as well, look at Tim Elliott versus Tagir Ulanbekov on the fight in the prelims even, right? I would say on paper, Ulanbekov is probably a better wrestler, but Tim Elliott was confident enough in his grappling, right? And in his ability to be on top and to scramble in those positions that he was able to implement some of his own offense. If you don't have that, right? Like, you can talk about takedown defense and stuff all you want, but it's not enough anymore. Maybe the one exception to that rule right now is Israel Adesanya, who's a phenomenal striker who has good takedown defense and is able to get back up to his feet. The problem is going to be what happens when somebody like Khamzat Chimaev comes through that division and can wrestle his fucking ass off. He's going to be able to put you on the ground repeatedly, and he's a professional at holding people on the ground, right? So you run into this dilemma where I think if you're not able to offer up offensive wrestling, your opponent isn't going to respect it, right? Let's go through every fight on the card. Sergey Spivak versus Greg Hardy. Greg Hardy clearly worked on his takedown defense a little bit, but as Spivak was able to chain things together, he just eventually got it, advanced him out, and fucked Greg Hardy up. Like, the fact that Greg Hardy couldn't even present you with any wrestling offense, your opponent is not going to respect your power. Your opponent is not going to respect your ability to get up, because in their mind, they're just going to take you down until they eventually get what they want, even if you do manage to get back up. If you understand wrestling from an offensive perspective, I just think you're so much harder to put on the ground, right? And when you have that threat in your back pocket, it makes your opponent respect it. That's why, like, Usman and Covington, man, they don't shoot on each other very often, right? So let's move on to the next one. Kevin Holland and Oliveira. Holland notoriously is always trying to fend off takedowns and stuff. It's like the number one thing that he has to work on. Oliveira, granted, Kevin Holland won, came back in the second round and looked phenomenal. And I think there was a clear mismatch on the feet in terms of technical prowess. But again, Kevin Holland runs into issues religiously where he gets his back put up against the cage. And I think it's because people don't respect his ability to offensively wrestle and counter, right? It's not enough to be defensive anymore. Bryce Mitchell versus Edson Barboza. Whenever you have a question like this, will the person be able to keep it on the feet? I almost always lean towards no in this day and age. Almost always no. You might be able to for a certain amount of time. Or if you run into a mismatch where your opponent doesn't have any striking skills to set up his takedowns, then you might be okay. But Bryce Mitchell's competent on the feet, right? And Edson Barboza is pretty incredible on the feet. But being competent was enough when he had offensive wrestling. Because people start respecting your strikes and stuff more because they're always worried about the threat of the takedown. I think that unless you are a real specialist, somebody like Charles Oliveira with amazing jiu-jitsu, where a lot of people are afraid to take you down, man, you're going to run into situations where they're just going to blow through you and not respect it. Another example that we can point to recently, Bobby Green versus Islam Makachev. I know that Bobby Green took that fight on short notice, but do you guys think it plays out differently if he gets a full camp? I kind of don't, man. And I think it's because Bobby Green would have to develop offensive wrestling skills to stifle off the offense coming at him from Islam Makachev. Otherwise, Makachev is always going to be the one. He's always going to be the one advancing. He's always going to be the one crowding your space. He's always going to be the one shooting, taking things to the ground. As long as you are... let's look at the next fight on UFC 272 card, guys, after Bryce Mitchell versus Barboza. RDA versus Moykano. Moykano has good jiu-jitsu, right? Good striker. If they stand in open space, I don't know. Maybe that fight plays out in Moykano's favor. But it was the fact that RDA felt confident enough to wrestle offensively that made him be able to just go blow through Moykano. And then we get to the main event, and it's the same fucking thing, guys. Jorge Masvidal is the cleaner striker. I think he's smoother with his hands. He clipped Colby at one point. He made it dangerous for Colby in certain situations, but on the whole, the fact that Colby was able to wrestle, and you guys saw this when fucking Usman and Masvidal fought too. The fact that they offer up, like the reason that Masvidal, I think, had his hands low and got dropped by that right hand, knocked the fuck out by that right hand that Usman hit him with, is because he was worried about the takedown attempt. Your opponent has to also respect the fact that you can take them down, or at least, like, I'm trying to think of some more recent examples. Like, even look at the champions at 145, the champion at 145, Alexander Volkanovski. Even when it went to the ground and he was caught in some dangerous submissions, when he was able to get out of those, he was confident being on top, right? So he's got, like, everything that you need. Like, you need to be very well-rounded, but if you cannot wrestle offensively, I'm not talking about fending stuff off under, like, everyone's like, oh, Jorge Masvidal, great takedown defense. He has this, he has that. Bobby Green, great takedown. Every time you hear that theme come up, and it's like, look at Darren Till. I mean, it's the same goddamn deal. If you are not able to offer it, if you're just a great striker, you need to work on being able to push your opponent up against the cage. I think that's the era that we're entering into. I think almost every time you see a striker versus grappler, and the question starts to become, can this person keep it on the feet? Answer's almost always no. If they don't have a wrestling background, if they are not able to implement it offensively, right? And your opponent, not only, they have to respect it, right? Like, man, I don't know. You have to, like, I don't think there's another way to beat these guys. I think that getting grounded and getting back to your feet is a terrible game plan. I think that getting your back pushed up against the cage and hoping that you can fend it off and return to the center is a terrible game plan. I think the right game plan is watching what these people are doing, learning how you can do it too, and then, like, the best, I don't know, man. To me, it just seems like if you're not able, I keep saying it over and over, but if you're not able to mount up offense with your takedowns and push the other person against the cage and make them work there, it's going to be very hard for you to win, especially as we start moving like 5 years down the road here. Now, everything is cyclical. At some point, we're going to figure it out, right? Like, I don't know. Everybody's always going to have their specialties, and there will be outliers, and there will be examples of people, but for the most part, I think if you're going to go up against these specialists, a guy like Islam Makachev and, you know, like a guy like Umar Nurmagomedov, you got to be able to offer them offense. That is why, though, I hope they make this fight. I hope they don't make him fight Beneil Dariush. I love the bout between Islam Makachev and Charles Oliveira because it's going to answer a lot of questions, right? Like, I don't think we've seen Oliveira face somebody with the wrestling prowess of Makachev. However, Oliveira has very clean striking, and he's very good on the ground. But he's a specialist in that category, right? Again, though, in my opinion, unless he clips Makachev with something, I think the fact that Makachev is going to be able to get on top, and the fact that Oliveira isn't going to be able to, I think it'll be very hard to submit Makachev from the bottom. And I think the fact that Oliveira won't be able to spend time on top against a guy like that is going to be detrimental to him in the long run. Like, I think we're really entering into this wave where you have to be able to implement what you want to do from a wrestling standpoint. It's not enough to fend it off anymore and keep it on the feet. You have to understand it from the perspective of attacking, right? So, I don't know. I know, repeating myself a lot per usual, but that was my main takeaway, man. You have to be able to attack with your wrestling. Not enough to be defensive anymore. But I don't know. If you guys enjoyed the content, whatever, hit the subscribe button. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments about the general direction MMA is heading. And yeah, thank you guys for tuning in. Much appreciated. Have a good one. Bye-bye.